Yeah, anyway, so yeah, I don't know.
This is what reviewing Escape from Tomorrow looks like. Hey guys, I'm Joel.
I'm Alex.
And
we recently saw Escape from Tomorrow.
Yes, the much talked about, much anticipated independent film that came out recently.
Yes.
And one we've been anticipating for quite a while.
Yeah, especially since, you know, its main draw is the fact that this film was shot in 2012 in Disney World and Disneyland without permission by a group of people, and then, you know, after that they sort of, there was a debate whether it would get released or not or anything. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that was the main sort of draw of the movie. The story basically is like a guy who gets fired from his job and is there in Disney World with his family, and he starts to kind of lose his mind, and that's pretty much, you know, the premise. Yeah. Basically, more or less.
So we should probably talk about how we got to see this movie, because again, it's not a widely distributed film.
No.
Yeah. So I saw it in its official Philadelphia premiere at the Trocadero Theater.
Yeah. So I saw it 2 weeks earlier at my school because it had just come out on demand. So they had a screening there of the film, and that was a pretty good turnout for that. But yeah, I don't know. Before we mention audience or response or experience,
maybe we should. I think we might want to start with that,
okay,
because that is going to affect everything from here on out.
My experience was very positive. Like, people were laughing at the movie, but they were laughing in sort of the right places and not laughing in the right places, because this movie is sort of like a dark comedy in a way. So, you know, I had a very positive theater experience during this film.
I had
which leads us to
the worst theater experience I've ever had in a movie. Seeing this film. I have been looking forward to this movie for I don't know how long. For one specific reason, you know, because I believe this movie is the future of digital cinema. You know, this, like, being able to use cameras to get beyond permits and the limitations for smaller filmmakers is the future of digital filmmaking, in my opinion. I don't think it has anything to do with 3D or major motion pictures. I really think this is the trail that needs to be blazed for digital filmmaking to have a future. And so I was really looking forward to it basically for that reason alone. And when I got to this theater that was showing this movie, it was very nice. It's a very nice theater. It's a very nice location. But for some reason, the audience that I had was just awful. They didn't throw things around. They weren't talking throughout the whole movie. They weren't constantly getting up and going to the bathroom. What they were doing was laughing, and laughing, and laughing, and laughing, and laughing. They laughed when the very first title card came up that said, "This movie is not affiliated with Walt Disney Pictures or any associated trademarks." Then they laughed when it showed footage of the rides. They laughed at more or less every major piece of dialogue or stage business in the film. And basically, everything was funny in this movie. And you know what? If I had seen this movie on my own, like in the comfort of my own house, I would not have come away from this film, I don't even think I would come away from it thinking dark comedy. But I was like forced, because everyone around me was laughing, to view it in completely from the perspective of a comedy. So it's like, I don't know how else to describe it. It was like watching The Hangover 2 at a psych ward. It was truly awful. I was sitting there and I just felt like blood was going to shoot out of my nose, because I'm like trying to get invested in this, in sort of like this very sort of dark, you know, deep trip into this guy's insanity, and there's laughter all around me, so I get like pulled out of that and forced to view this movie in a comedy setting. It's like trying to watch, you know, maybe not comparing this movie to Eraserhead, but it would be like trying to watch Eraserhead, and then all of a sudden your screen freezes and glitches and it's replaced with an Adam Sandler comedy. Just because I was forced to view every single scene in that movie in a comedic context, in addition to the context I was trying to view it in. So
That's sad.
so I'm only saying that to let you guys know, and this is the first time I've ever said this in a video, but like, definitely take my opinion of the movie with a grain of salt, because this is the one movie I've seen where the theater experience affected my enjoyment of the movie. So, what did you think?
I can't imagine what that would have been like.
What did you think of Escape from Tomorrow?
Initially I enjoyed it, except like my impression was when I first got out of it, like my brain was just kind of swirling, because you see this film, and then you see like where it's shot, and then you see the stuff that happens in the movie, and it has this really, really weird, perverse effect on you where it's kind of like, it's like, you know, it is perverting your image of Disney, because you only ever see footage in Disney World that Disney lets you see, like in commercials or like home movies from families or something, that are usually, you know, nice and kind of like, you know, fun and pretty much almost always like in a happy context. And here it was just totally turned upside down, and it's like it would definitely have not had the same effect if it was done at another park or a set or some, like all on a sound stage or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is like real Disney World, and so you're there and you get the feeling you're watching something wrong almost, like, or just something transgressive and weird, and that's what it felt like watching this movie. And that's probably one of the things that makes this movie stand out. That and like the fact of how it was made. The rest of the movie is really like bewildering in a way. The main guy is pretty good though.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good. I mean, he kind of holds the story together in that way. And there's some of that, but the movie does sort of, you know, you do sort of follow him around, kind of like, yeah, but like through the movie there's a sense of dread building up, like you're kind of expecting horrible things to happen any second, and especially towards the end, and it just kind of becomes increasingly more nightmarish in certain ways. But then the movie kind of like, the movie would be would be really, really great if it stayed like doing that sort of stuff, but it injects these other really weird touches that I feel like kind of stretched it a little too far in some places. Like there's this for some reason there's some very, like, I don't even know, it feels like immature kind of imagery and like stuff going on, very like kind of overtly sexual stuff, but in a really, or it just kind of reminded me of like something I'd see on like something I'd see on YouTube, or a student film stuff. I mean, I think that we're trying to do is put a spin on it that, see, look, this stuff is still, you know, under the surface present in Disney World, you know, sex and that whole thing, but the way they did it was a little too much on the nose.
My thoughts on this movie, it was a very, very mixed bag. This movie's like a granola bar of a film.
And I hate raisins.
Yeah, well, yeah, this movie's got a lot of raisins.
Yeah.
If this movie, like I said, I feel like this movie is ushering in a new era of filmmaking. But if it's the birth of a new era of filmmaking, it's less The Great Train Robbery and more Fred Ott's Sneeze. It's just the things that it pulls off well, it pulls off really well, and this movie has a number of very effective scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember just a couple of days afterwards, I was talking about a Disney movie that I really liked, or I was talking about Disney in some capacity, and I felt really dirty for a second.
Yes!
And I didn't know why at first, and they're like, wait a minute, I saw Escape from Tomorrow the other day. And so it sticks with you in some good ways. And there's a lot of really effective and good moments. But there are also a lot of big missteps. This is, I think you used the right word, this is an immature film from an immature filmmaker. And there's promise here, and there's things that work really, really well. But there's also a lot of stuff that just doesn't work or falls flat or just just feels wrong within the kind of movie that it is. The first thing that I didn't really care much for was the tone. I felt like this movie does go for like a satirical edge or a dark comedy. For me, that is less effective. That's less of an effective sort of take on this kind of story than if it was serious. I feel like it would have been a much more interesting and effective movie if it was like a serious take on this guy who goes with his family, loses his job, and then goes insane while at Disney World. Like, that would be very transgressive and weird and stuff. But I think like the fact that they injected some really immature kind of toilet humor and stuff like that, it takes the teeth out of it. With like between the scene where he's spraying like the Neosporin around in the Epcot Center, it's all like a lot of like the shots of basically this dad, while on vacation after he finds out he loses his job, he sees these two young girls at the park, two young, very attractive French girls, and he starts following them around the park, almost unwittingly at first, but like something bad is going to happen. Like if he like continues following these two girls, there's a certain element of dread to it. But there's like whenever it shows the two girls, they're doing something that's kind of overtly alluring, and then it cuts back to him. There's a little bit of Tex Avery there, which I don't think should have been there. Like, this should have been like a very terrifying thing. Like, the sense of dread should have just kept going, but it's like...
I don't know, there was like some stuff that really stuck with me though, was a lot of the more like, I don't know, weird, like disturbing stuff that the one woman who was like, she used to be like a Disney princess or something.
Oh yes, yeah.
It's weird, like that, some of that stuff was really bizarre, and that stuff wasn't too much overdone, except the really weird flashback scene where the green screen and the foreground, it's like, what is it?
I understand why they did that,
No.
because if there was actually another woman dressed up as a Disney princess and there are people filming her, and children coming up to her, that would have attracted some attention from the park.
I know why they green screened that, but I don't know, this is probably stupid, but like they were like, the camera movement behind
the camera movement didn't match, which I honestly
it didn't look careless. No, it was intentional, but it was just very strange and actually kind of added to it did add to the
I didn't mind that so much.
Yeah.
There's some other like more realistic attempts at green screen too.
I didn't mind the green screen,
which was
so much.
okay.
So some people in the theater when I was watching this were kind of like, I could hear people whispering during the green screen shots. I was like, congratulations, you have eyes! You can see it's a green screen shot! Now shut the heck up!
I feel like, it being in black and white helped with that too.
Yeah.
It made it less obvious.
But the director, I'll give him this, he knows the power of music in a film.
The music in this movie, both the original stuff and sort of
there's original, and then there's some extra music, but the original score is phenomenal. Like, I have not heard a score sound this good in a long time.
Yes, absolutely gorgeous stuff. Really, like you said, probably one of the best scores I've heard in a long time.
It actually really does help the movie in its way, in helping you remember it. And there's a scene where at the end, near the end, where they use a Bernard Herrmann piece from Fahrenheit 451. And it works really well. Like, that scene is really probably the most haunting scene in the movie because of that music. And if you see that,
I think like for me the best part of the whole movie was the opening.
Yeah.
Before I really figured out kind of what the director was going for, and before the audience got really bad, it was probably my favorite moment because you got that gorgeous sort of golden age Hollywood music with with like the slow motion shots of the roller coaster or the train or whatever that was. Then it's intercut with like more sinister elements of Disney World, like under the surface, and I really enjoyed stuff like that in the movie. But like a lot of the stuff that related to the park, like when they're on the Winnie the Pooh ride or on It's a Small World, and they have like that. It sounds almost like a.
They couldn't get the Small World music, but they created something even worse. Equally worse, which I didn't think was possible, but they did.
Yeah, it's a chorus of children mewing, I think. Sort of like if the boys' choir did the Meow Mix theme.
Yeah.
It was pretty effective. All the scenes on the rides were pretty nice, with the exception of that one where you're flying, the one, because there was some of the more immature elements drifted into that.
Yeah.
But a good chunk of the ride footage and stuff about the park itself was really worked well.
Yeah, when it was ever about the family kind of trying to get to the ride, when they were in line
for the Buzz Lightyear ride.
That was kind of interesting stuff they were trying to do. In his mind, he kind of creates this fantasy that there was this conspiracy against him. That's why he couldn't get on the Buzz Lightyear ride, and that's why it was all disappointing. And then these people come later on the end of the film and kind of sort of transmit this memory of being on the Buzz Lightyear ride to the boy, so that he did have a good time, and he's not allowed to they were trying to communicate some of that stuff.
Yeah,
I think
at Disney World, nobody's allowed to not have a good time.
Yeah, and I think that's what they were going for, and it came across to some degree.
There were a lot of other elements that didn't work. I felt like the wife character was just awful. Because I guess they were trying to have a nagging wife, but she has no dimensionality to her at all. She just kind of nags. She doesn't really have a character to speak of. And I guess it's more about the dad, but I feel like one of the major characters in the movie is the wife, and she spends so much of the movie just nagging and unfairly, saying stuff against the dad, or just, why aren't you treating the kids well here or there? And that's that's all she did the whole movie, was just nag.
I don't know, I definitely would say see the movie, because it's really very unique, but I think it's, just kind of a push forward for more movies like it to be made that would be better.
Yes.
So it's definitely sort of a crude step forward.
I would also recommend that you see this movie. I wouldn't recommend it to somebody who wants to go see a good movie, though. This is for people who are interested in film history, who are interested in film, and want to see an important movie. Because this movie's not a very good movie in terms of it has moments, but it's worth seeing because of its importance and because of what it means for the future of filmmaking.
Yeah.
But definitely, as it stands, it's a very, very troubling experience.